Another name looking likely to leave, and a bit of a surprise one, is Jack Bose from Gold Coast. Now, it was flagged, I think, a week and a half ago that the Suns are likely to lose some names that were going to come as quite a shock, and he seems to be the first one. We knew that the likes of Isaac Rankin was going to be departing for some time, but Jack Bose is going to be a big blow for them. Now, it does come with salary concerns, and Gold Coast are certainly trying to move some things around to make sure that they have Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson on their books for the long haul. Those two will have their contracts expire at the end of next season, so they've got to get some business done early, like they did with Ben King this year. And it's going to force someone like Jack Bose, who's supposed to be on north of 800k next year, and a total of well over $1 million across the next 2 years for the final 2 years of his deal. So some keen clubs are going to have to give up a decent pay packet to land him, but it could come along with pick 7, which is quite an interesting strategy, but it's one that the Suns just shows how desperate they are to kind of see someone like Bose and his salary depart this off-season.
Yeah, I think you can look at this one of two ways. It's either a disaster that the Suns have got themselves in this position where they're, again, like we saw Will Brodie last year go for similar reasons, and he had a terrific season. So you could look at it as a bit of a disaster for the Suns, and they might lose a very talented intercept defender and a high pick, or you could look at it as good planning, and look, they might have to take a hit with losing Bose, but I think their draft here is incredibly strong, so pick 7 going isn't the end of the world. I mean, personally, I would be trying to find a way to keep Jack Bose if I'm the Suns. I don't know if he's the one you want to lose. I know he had a lot of injury concerns at the start of the year and probably didn't have the season he would have wanted, the Suns would have hoped out of him. But, I mean, he's 2021, he's 2020. He was unbelievable. He was very, very good. He became a key part of that defence. He helped free up Jack Lukosius, who obviously now has moved forward, but I think probably played his best footy in that 2020 hub season when he was able to fly up the wing and get free and use his incredible kicking skills. But Bose played an incredible role in allowing that to happen. I understand they've pushed his money back. I think, as you said, it's about 850k that they owe him going into next year. And can I understand why they might feel like they need to get out of that deal with a few big deals coming up. But they have the Rankin money put away, you'd assume. That was about 850 as well, maybe a bit less than Adelaide's offer. But if they've got that money somewhere, I just feel like surely there's a way they could convince Bose to stay. And to be fair, there's been no report that he wants to leave. But I couldn't imagine why they wouldn't have at least gone and said, hey, what if we extend it out to 3 years and we give you that extra year and we spread that money over there? Or I just think they should find a way, because ultimately they're going to give up Bose and pick 7. They're going to get very little in return. And the only reasonable B-side club can pay that pay packet. I think it'd be a bit of a miss here for the Suns.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. There's no go-home factor. He's from far north Queensland, and there's probably less than a dozen players from Queensland in the league, and most of them either play for Brisbane and Gold Coast. So it is a really funny one to see a Queensland player actually leave that state and potentially go to somewhere like Victoria, where it seems like most of the clubs after him, Hawthorn and Essendon and Geelong,
who do you think
quite keen.
Best suited for him out of those?
Geelong have come up multiple times as a pretty strong club pushing for him, but now they've got a pretty set pay structure in who they allow to be paid X amount of money, and they want their leaders, their top players really to be on those top deals, like your Stewarts and these kind of guys. Bose coming in on 850k is certainly going to shake that up. So interesting how they play that one. Obviously, like you said, like Gold Coast could, John could kind of split that contract, and they'd be so in on pick 7. The Cats, they'd be very, very keen to get another first round pick through the door, just to add to their I guess list development and what they can do in the coming years after winning the flag with the oldest side in the game's history. And Tannenbaugh and Ollie Henry also likely to come in, but if they can get those two and pick 7, well, it's just another few years added to their reign. So the Cats are one. Bombers make sense. I think they've got a heap of salary cap space, so and they'd love pick 7 as well through the door to really match
and they need
their early
too.
pick.
They need defenders.
Yeah, it'd work really well alongside the likes of Mason Redmond, Jordan Ridley. So big tick there. But like you said, the Suns certainly could retain him, and it is kind of a funny one. If they do lose him though, and like someone you mentioned, Jack Lukosius could easily take his spot. They've got Elijah Hollins come in, he can go up on that wing as well. So they've got plenty to work with. And if it means getting rid of Bose to make sure you keep Rowell and Anderson, then that's great. But if they lose one of those two, then they've really shot themselves in the foot. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it plays out and who else arises as a potential departee from the Gold Coast Suns. Now, another name as well that has been listed as gettable. Now, it seems he might not want the move, but he certainly could be open to offers, is Tiger Jack Graham. Now, we know Richmond have Tim Taranto, Jacob Hopper, likely to come to the club over the trade period, but could force Jack Graham out the door in what is certainly a move that the Tigers fans might understand, but would certainly also wouldn't be too happy with as an outcome, given Graham's still quite young, seen as a future captain of the club, and yeah, could find a new home, likely maybe back home in South Australia.
Yeah, not too much has come out about this yet, other than the fact that it might be an option. There was a lot of interest in Jack Graham last year, I remember Carlton were one that pursued him quite hard and ultimately missed out, and it seemed like he was going to stay at the Tigers, and that just might be him for life. He loves Punt Road, and they love him there, as you mentioned. But yeah, if Richmond do need to clear space for Hopper and Taranto, you can understand why Graham might be that type, because he did move away from the centre bounce a little bit last season, and they are getting in two very, very good players. But I just can't imagine letting Jack Graham go would be for the betterment of the football club in any capacity. I think he's a superstar. He's a very, very good player. He is heart and soul. As he said, he's touted as a future captain behind, I'm seeing the likes of Trent Cox, Toby Curvis and Dylan Grimes. Like, there's a special kind of character in those three that Jack Graham fits that mould terrifically. And if he was to leave, I mean, who takes that spot, who goes next? And it's a big risk. We mentioned the Suns making a big risk. I mean, bringing in two players on 7-year deals of north of like 700k to get rid of Jack Graham, who has been a part of your most successful era in almost ever. It seems like a brave move. It's not one I'm on board with, but I mean, fair play to the Tigers if that's what they feel they have to do to get those two in and keep moving the list forward. Fair enough, but it's not a deal I'm on board with.
Last one I want to touch on is Sydney. Now, they came ever so close to winning the premiership, putting themselves in a grand final, albeit not the day they wanted on the big stage, but they are the only club that enters the off-season with multiple first-round picks, and that's certainly going to change with how some clubs are shaping up and the players they're likely to lose and the picks they're likely to gain. But Sydney seem to be the quietest club when it comes to the off-season. I'm not sure if any name's actually been linked to going up to the Swans, and it seems like maybe a fringe defender in Lewis Malikin's one of the only ones that are likely to maybe gain some attention as far as a trade. So where do we see the Swans? Are they a sleeping giant? Are they just going about their business, happy to attack the draft? And I guess what do they need? Because they've just re-signed Buddy, so that's ticked off their key forward for a year. They've got McLean, they've got Amati, they've got McDonald, that's fine. I think their midfield's set in stone quite well. And then you look at their back line, yes, they've got the McCartan boys, Rampy and Lloyd. Lloyd's still unsigned, but Rampy and Lloyd kind of entering the twilight or in the twilight of their careers. So it's a bit of a funny one. And then you look at their ruck situation. Now, Tom Hickey's been absolutely fantastic for them, and I think a lot of attention's gone on to him now after the grand final and his performance, but I think they'll surely stick with him as their first-string ruckman, and Peter Adams is a pretty formidable, I think, second option when he's available. Obviously, he's both injuries and suspensions have really made his first season at the Swans. So where do we see Sydney at the moment? Because I feel like, there hasn't been a lot of discussion around them. So do we think they're a sleeping giant, or just kind of going about their business quietly and not needing to make too many changes given how their season went?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think they'll bat themselves if the draft's the way they go and that's how it pans out. I think they'll be very confident to go there and pick the right players and develop them. But I think they'd be quietly making a few phone calls. They'd be just preparing for little things like the fact that Lance Franklin is going to retire at the end of the next season, so they need a backup. And Logan McDonald, who had a terrific first half of the year, we saw him kind of drop away second half, so they're not going to want to expose him to being the number one forward too early if they don't have to. I think there's absolutely no reason this name and the club have been linked, but one that just pops into my mind is Harry McKay. He's out of contract at the end of the next year. Look, from everything I've heard, he will be signing pre-round one, and the Carlton will lock that one away, no problems. But at the moment, he's signed till the end of next season. Buddy, the same. I mean, if they're looking for a tall, athletic, left-footed forward, it almost fits the perfect mould, Harry McKay. But, I mean, if they could get him up there, he's the kind of player that could really turn that forward line around. I mean, Buddy, his grand final, I mean, we all saw it. It wasn't his best performance by a very, very long way. But what it did expose was the fact that when Sam Reid went down, they didn't have that big marking forward. No Logan McDonald on that side. So Harry McKay's one I just think keep an eye on if Sydney are keen. They definitely would have the money. There's no doubt about that. They're a side very much like Geelong who don't really used to ever find themselves in salary cap pressure. They know how to prepare themselves for these. There'll obviously be a bit of Buddy money when he leaves. And I'm sure we know the offers have been coming in for Harry McKay. We know Essendon and North Melbourne have been monitoring, and we know Carlton's offer would be, around that 800, maybe a bit higher than that as well. So, I mean, there's a few things that I think just make sense that if Sydney were to look for that key forward replacement, that Harry McKay is that perfect kind of slot in.
There you go. Harry McKay for the Swans. Like you said, it'd be a perfect fit, whether, he's still unsigned for beyond 2023 by even round 1 next year remains to be seen. But we'll, like you said, it's exactly what they're after. Another, not necessarily young, but a player that's got, that next 7 years ahead of him in his peak, just like a lot of the rest of the Swans core group goes. They've locked away a lot of their younger names for long-term deals, Chad Warner being one of the latest, so it's not like they have some big contracts coming off. Exactly. Absolutely. I think, when a key forward is a focus for them and you've got a pre-agent like Harry McKay, then there certainly could be the question asked, and they've done some work previously on trying to get some big names up to the Harbour City, with Darcy Moore being one of them, and it seems like, there were some pretty big lures from the Swans, but he also re-signed, obviously, with Collingwood. So, a bit of a match-up there for sure, but
with that being said, fully expect Harry McKay to stay at Carlton. That's everything I've heard says he will stay at Carlton, and everything him and the club have said is that he's very keen to stay. It's just if you're thinking about that perfect replacement, McKay's the name that pops in my mind. And I mean, Sydney have done. They look at the Buddy deal 9 years ago. No one knew that was happening, and it came up. So, I mean, who knows with the Swans? They're incredibly good at getting these deals done. But no, I do fully expect he'll stay at Carlton, but he just fits that mould.
That'll wrap up today's episode of Zero Hanger TV. Now you can head to our YouTube page or through our site on zerohanger.com for all the latest trade news, rumours, and as well as all stuff on the latest on the Essendon coaching job. And we'll catch you next week for what will be in the middle of the free agency and trade windows.